Welcome to the show, sports fans. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything in District 3 week in, week out in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney joined as always by Logan Green, wearing his finest Carolina Panthers hoodie today. Logan, what's going on?
Yeah, look, Brandon, who would have thought it? Went out and they're in the playoffs. Like, they're right there. Isn't that great? And it's very possible. This doesn't need to be a Carolina Panthers podcast, but man, it's very winnable the rest of the year. We're going to the playoffs. So you heard it here first. Panthers hosting a first-round home game in the playoffs. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I real quick, just on the NFL, I've had a hard time watching this year just because I feel like the quality of the product is watered down. There's a lot of really bad teams out there. And it's hard to watch for me personally. I don't know if you felt
No,
the
I
same
feel
way.
like there's just not a team that is like dominant, right? The Eagles are pretty good, right? Obviously, the Chiefs are great. I just feel like there's just a lot of muck. Did you see Fox at all, their pregame on Sunday? They did this skit. They call it Sacks in the City, right? And it's these four ladies from the NFC East all gossiping about, being – it's really funny. Look it up. But then, she goes, at least we're not the NFC South. And they – they're all prim and proper, and it jumps over to the NFC South, and this Panthers guy stands up and he goes, "Give me more biscuits." And there's a Falcons girl. She's like got no teeth. And she's like, "What are y'all looking at?" It's hilarious. It's great. But anyways, yes, somebody's going to win the NFC South, and it's going to be ugly, but somebody's going to win it, and they're going to host a home game. So why not us?
And I feel like it's too spread. Thursday night football, Saturday triple headers coming up, London games, Germany games, Monday night football. Like I don't know the time anymore for all that.
There is a lot. Yeah. I think I used to watch it all, and now I watch the Panthers, and then I track my fantasy team as they're going. So that's about it. But they did beat Seattle, which is great. It's always good living in this area of the world to beat the Broncos and the Seahawks in back-to-back games. So I will take that every day of the week. So it could be worse. It could be worse. So
for sure. Well,
anyways,
if you want to see Logan's Carolina Panthers hoodie, you can watch the video version of this podcast at the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel or Facebook page. And if you're watching on YouTube, could you I'm gonna shamelessly beg here. Could you subscribe to our channel? That will help our analytics. We're trying to get to 1,000. That's the goal that I've set, is I want 1,000 subscribers to our YouTube channel. We're at like 600 something right now. So we're not that far away. We're over halfway there, but that's a big number for us. That will help us in the YouTube algorithms as well. So if you are watching this on YouTube, just please subscribe to our channel. It's a little bell icon. You click that, and then you'll be notified every time, we post a new episode of the Treasure Valley Prepcast, or we go live with one of our wrestling podcasts or one of our preview shows. So it takes 2 seconds. That would be awesome. And if you're watching this on Facebook, hit that like button too, because that helps us in the social media algorithms as well.
Yeah. So if you want to support Idaho Sports in a non-financial way, that's a great way to do it. Costs you nothing, does nothing. Just click it and help us out if you don't hate us, right?
Right. If you don't subscribe or like it, then we will assume you hate us. So
yeah, we will. That's it. There's no middle ground.
Right. You can also listen to this podcast audio version at our website, IdahoSports.com. Across the top of the homepage, you'll see a tab that says Prepcasts. From there, there's a little drop-down menu. You can click on the Treasure Valley Prepcast. There's a little embedded player on the page there that you can listen to it there, or wherever you download your podcasts, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple. I have an Android phone, so the premier podcast app for Androids is called Podcast Addict. That's what I use personally every week. So wherever you download your podcasts, you can get the Treasure Valley Prepcast there as well. And if you're listening to it, hit subscribe as well. Then you don't have to search it out every week whenever we publish a new episode. it automatically gets downloaded for you. And that's one less thing you've got to worry about. So, all right, let's get into what we saw last week. We do this every week. We kind of hit on a couple of big stories. We're not going to be able to get to every team and every player every week because there's so many teams in the Treasure Valley, right? 5A all the way down to 1A D2. So we're going to kind of, highlight the most noteworthy things that we saw. And if you're watching or listening and there's a team or an athlete or a story that we're not giving attention to and you think we should, send us an email, Brandon@IdahoSports.com, Logan@IdahoSports.com, because we love hearing from the fans. And, hey, why aren't you talking about this player or this team? Well, because we didn't know about it. So,
yeah, what are there, like 60 teams in District 3? Like, we would love to know about it if you want to let us know, and we'll give you the platform. Like, that's the thing. Like, I feel like we have a good platform here for people to hear about it. We just don't know everything that goes on. And we'd love to promote whoever it is out there that's doing great. But sometimes those things don't get reported back or whatever it is. And so if you want to, and I would even plug for this, Brandon, if you're out there and you send out like, game notes or whatever after the game, because Brandon's in charge of all that, putting that in, making sure everything's up to date. But if you guys, if you have an email that goes out after your games, include us on those emails. That would require no extra work. And then we know about it before we don't even have to ask. You're sending us your stuff every night or every other night, whatever it is. Just include us on whatever chain, email, text, email, whatever it is after your games that gives final scores and stats. Then we've got that, and then we can hit on that super easily.
Yes, I want to give a couple shout outs. Compass Charter does a fantastic job. Both their basketball coaches of sending us info. Greenleaf Friends.
Yeah, Greenleaf does a great job.
Yeah, during football season, Melba always sent me a recap with all the stats. So that's the other thing too, is, we're going to talk about the teams that we have data on as well. So that definitely helps out. Owyhee has been sending us a lot of good stuff for basketball season. So yeah, and we'll talk about Owyhee in just a little bit, but we're going to start today at the smallest level, the 1A D2 level, and it's unfortunately not positive stuff we're going to be talking about here. The communities of Cambridge, Midvale, and Indian Valley are grieving right now. It was really a sad weekend. Tri-Valley, of course, is the co-op between Midvale and Cambridge high schools. They co-op for all their sports. Tri-Valley, their girls basketball coach, Jeff Springer, very unexpectedly passed away this past weekend. And so our hearts and our thoughts and our prayers go out to everybody that's affected by this, not just the people that are currently at school or in those communities, but Coach Springer had a lot of former players that have moved on to college that are hurting. So this is a widespread impact that we're feeling here, Logan.
Yeah, I was reading some stuff online with it, just seeing some comments from people around, and like you said, it's not just the kids that are there and the girls on that team right now. It's the ones that have gone on, right? That are gone, that are still impacted by their coach, right? Moving on into the next level. And it stinks. Like, there's no other way to put it. And that community has just, it stinks for them. Like, right. They had another situation a couple of years ago with a car accident on New Year's, and it just, can somebody give them a break over there almost? And it's just sad for them to have a situation like that. And I'd been to a couple of games where he was coaching. I just think, Paul and I went up to Garden Valley one night for a doubleheader, Garden Valley against Tri-Valley. And you could tell, I mean, that was the powerhouse team, right? With Josie Jones and Emma Holland, right? The dynamic duo, those two were that went on to win a state title. And you could just tell that team loved their coach, not just respected him, not just wanted to play for him. They loved him. He was a part of not just their basketball life, but their life. And it is tough to lose a coach like that, to lose somebody. I think everybody has somebody like that in their life that's not a parent, not an uncle, not an aunt, but somebody that's an outside, whether it's a coach, a friend, a religious person, whoever it is in their life that means something. And that is, it's just brutal. And you know what? It's not fair sometimes. And it's just very sad for everybody in the Tri-Valley community.
Yeah, we're certainly grieving along with everybody over there. And so the timeline of events, again, this happened very unexpectedly because Friday night, Tri-Valley's girls basketball team actually played Rockland in a neutral site game at the College of Idaho in Caldwell. Rockland was coming over for the small school showcase, which we will talk about as well. And they decided to pick up a one-off game with Tri-Valley. So they played Friday night. Rockland won that game 54-25. And then Tri-Valley was supposed to play Cary on Saturday at the small school showcase in girls basketball. And that game got canceled. The boys basketball team was supposed to play Saturday at Greenleaf Friends. That game got canceled. And that's where I first saw the news, was from Greenleaf Friends. They said basically, hey, today's boys basketball game has been canceled. There was an emergency situation with one of the coaches from Tri-Valley, and they're asking us to pray for them. And so that's when I first said, this isn't a good situation. So the girls and boys basketball games got canceled for Saturday. The wrestling team had already left. They were in Nissa competing at the Calhoun Classic in Nissa. And so the wrestling team Saturday morning, had to huddle up and they had to have that hard conversation that, Jeff Springer, Coach Springer had passed away. And I can't even imagine trying to then go out and compete after hearing something like that, because even though it's a different sport, girls basketball, wrestling, it's a small school and it's a very tight knit, everybody knows everyone. And despite that, they came through with a couple of champions. Elias Walker won at 220 pounds. Wyatt Mora was your champion at 170 pounds. So despite the adversity, the Tri-Valley wrestling team competed really well on Saturday, considering everything that was going on. So that was pretty impressive, I thought.
Yeah, they had a couple, I think, a couple of other people that did great. I mean, I think you mentioned Elias Walker won, Wyatt Mora, Audrey Winkles. Like they had some great placers, Rebecca Chandler, in that as well for Tri-Valley. So they did well that next day, or that, at that tournament in Nissa. So congrats to them, to fight through it, right? To get through that. They also had some fourth place finishers, JC Henry, Toby Walker, Mike Wagoner, and then Heath Fortin. So a good showing by Tri-Valley, all things considered. And you would hope, they have a game. I think their first basketball game will be against Council, I believe, this weekend. And I would hope that I can only imagine the support that they'll get from that community for that game. You would think that they'll have a lot of people. It probably will be an emotional game. I can't imagine it not being. And so just continued support to Tri-Valley from us here at Idaho Sports.
Certainly. Yeah. Paula Tucker, the athletic director, girls basketball coach at Council. She'd been at Salmon River prior to that. So, she knew Coach Springer well. And so, yes, in terms of a landing spot, because they had some games that they were supposed to play this week that they kind of wiped out and said, we need some time. But in terms of a landing spot, they're going to play December 17th against Council. And I think that's a pretty good place to try and resume. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible, but to try and pick up the pieces and press on. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I knew Coach Springer super well. I did have the fortune of, when I first came on at IdahoSports.com, this was even before I was a full-time employee. The very first state basketball tournament I covered for IdahoSports.com was 3 years ago. The 1A D2 girls basketball tournament that Tri-Valley ended up winning. It was their first basketball championship in girls basketball. They had just won the volleyball championship in the fall as well. And so I talked to Coach Springer throughout that tournament, and the big storyline with Tri-Valley was, hey, we just built this brand new gym, and how cool would it be to have our first
fresh banner.
A fresh banner. Literally, Coach Springer told me that they got in one practice in the new gym right before state started. That was his, otherwise it was under construction all the way through. He said, we got one practice in, and basically, hey, let's go win that championship and hang that banner up. And they went out and did that. You talked about, Josie Jones and Emma Holland were the two guards. They had, Marin Hansen, Manon Tyler down low, some really tall, imposing players as well. And so as I was talking to Coach Springer, about the tournament, on the record, of course, he was like, oh, Rockland is really good. Carey, is fantastic. Off the record, once we finished the on the record part, he said, I think we've got a great chance. And nobody is even like considering us as a possibility. And I think we're going to turn a lot of heads. And that's exactly what they did. And then the other funny part, I remember asking him, I said, so are you going to stay in, because the tournament was at Nampa High School. And I said, are you going to stay in Nampa? Are you going to stay in Boise? Or are you going to make that trip every night? Because it's not a long trip, but it's long enough, right?
Yeah, it's like an hour, 15-ish minutes. I don't know. It's another 20. They'll probably kill me for getting it wrong, but like, I don't know, another 20 to 30 minutes past Weiser-ish. I did a football game in Cambridge this year, and I always forget. You hit a dead zone there after you get to Weiser, that there's a good gap of space there between the towns. But
yeah, it looks like maybe hour 15, maybe.
Yeah,
Nampa to Midvale. But so I asked him, I said, are you going to stay in Nampa? Are you going to do the drive every night? He said, we're going back and forth every night. He goes, I got cattle I got to tend to in the morning. He was a rancher. And so he said, yeah, I got to go get up in the morning and run the cattle. So
that's hashtag 1A basketball problems, right? Is that where you got to get up and tend to your cattle before your state championship game?
Yes, and I think that was probably a good release, because you can get caught up in, oh man, we're playing for the championship.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
You don't have time to when you're literally running a ranch as well as coaching basketball. So, So again, very tragic news that Jeff Springer, and he was, I think, only in his mid-50s. So this was unexpected, gone way too soon. And we are certainly thinking of everybody in the Tri-Valley, Cambridge, Midvale, Indian Valley. Our thoughts and prayers are with you, and good luck as you try to press on and move forward. But IdahoSports.com is certainly with you every step of the way, thinking about you, thoughts, prayers. There's no good way to transition out of that, but there were some compelling basketball matchups. We talked about the small school showcase. The boys played at Mountain View High School. The girls played at Timberline. Before we get to that, let's swing all the way up to 5A, because the big story everybody was talking about was this Nike Northwest Invitational that was being hosted by North Idaho College up in Coeur d'Alene. Now, originally it was supposed to be 4 Idaho schools versus 4 Washington schools and like premier programs. Well, because of crappy weather, all the Washington teams had to bail out essentially, except North Central High from Spokane. So,
you know what, Brandon, I felt that because I was planning to go over to that Panthers Seahawks game, but I did not. It was bad. Like I think Snoqualmie got shut down at one point, and I feel them, guys.
Yeah. So originally, Lake City was supposed to play Garfield High School, which is from Seattle, and they're typically a pretty strong program. Owyhee was supposed to play Rainier Beach, which is like the premier high school program in Washington. Just most recently, Paolo Banchero played for Rainier Beach. So that gives you and of course he played at Duke and now is in the NBA. So that was going to be like, everybody was licking their chops, man. Owyhee, Rainier Beach, like 2 premier Northwest programs going at it. Well, that gets all wiped out, but I think we found a pretty good solution where then Owyhee and Lake City said, well, let's just play each other, which we wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And then the game actually happened and Lake City wins by 20. And it was kind of an eye-opener, I think, for a lot of people in the Treasure Valley that, okay, this Lake City team is pretty legit.
Yeah, and, last year, we were talking about this, Brandon, but last year, Lake City came down and a couple other teams from up north came down, and a couple of teams from Treasure Valley are going up north this year and doing like a mini, tour of the Treasure Valley. And Lake City played Bishop Kelly, Meridian, and Eagle, I believe. And they ended up winning all 3 of those games. They were very close, very tight. No room for error in any of those games, really. And then they got to the state tournament, right? And then they lose to Centennial, a team that competed in the 5A SIC against all those teams. And it was, I think a lot of people were shocked at that, but you could see that potentially being an issue based on how close those games were if you use that transitive property thing that I talk about here and there. But, you knew that the 5A SIC teams could compete with Lake City. So new year, fresh, clean slate. And now it might be flipped because, my goodness, that Lake City, it wasn't close. It was Lake City won that. They won that game. And you know what? Blake Buchanan gets up. So my nephew plays basketball for Ridgeline right across the border in Liberty Lake, Washington. And he said in summer ball, they had to play Lake City. And my brother-in-law was texting me. He's like, whoa, do we have a chance? I said, no, you don't. Don't feel bad. And my nephew, he's the post, right? So he had to match up with Buchanan. And I'm like, man, I feel bad for you, buddy, because that's not going to go well. But then again, my brother-in-law said this, and we said this, that it might be Colton Mitchell up there. And again, this is a Treasure Valley Prepcast, so I guess we don't need to harp too much on them. But could Colton Mitchell possibly be one of the best players in the state and is getting a little bit overshadowed maybe by his teammate being so good as well? He's got an offer to ISU, but like Brandon mentioned off air, they're hoping that ink dries quickly on there, because I think other people are going to come calling for Colton Mitchell when the time comes.
Yeah, so Blake Buchanan has committed to Virginia, I believe.
Yep.
ACC program, and he's 6'10", but Colton Mitchell is the point guard, and he really, to me, is the guy that makes Lake City go. He is already Lake City's career leader in points, total points scored, which Lake City opened in the 90s, so it's not like a long, extensive history, but there's been some good players to go through there.
Yeah.
And then in the win over Owyhee, he scored 39 points and set the new school record for most points in a single game against Owyhee. So that to me, tells me that Lake City is a team that's focused on a mission after they got upset by Centennial in the opening round last year as the number 1 overall seed at state. And so for Owyhee, I think they're still going to be just fine. I think this actually is a good thing for Andy Harrington's Storm. This is going to allow them to refocus and go, okay, we can't just show up and expect to win. We have to put in the work. We have to continue to get better. Yeah. And the big question for Owyhee is, who's the leader of the team? Last year it was Jack Payne, right? He was the senior leader, all SIC, all state, all everything, Colorado State commit. And this is still a young Owyhee team. We forget about that, that despite all the talented players they have, they're still a young team. So who's going to emerge and take that leadership role as well at Owyhee?
Yeah, and maybe that's going to take more time this season, because Jack Payne had been there, right? He had played in a state tournament at Boise, and they beat Rigby in the first round, and that was 2 years ago. They had Lake City on the ropes. They were leading that game in the fourth quarter until Jack Payne fouled out, which I'm sure he's got some thoughts about that. But he had been there, right? He had played in an environment he could step up and be that kind of guy for Owyhee. Who, new school, really not any seniors. I don't know, like, how many seniors do they have this year? I mean, off the top of my head, like, everybody that I'm thinking of is young, right? Is a freshman or a sophomore. They had so many guys play as freshmen last year who could, like you mentioned, Brandon, somebody's going to have to step into that leader role for Owyhee. And maybe, it'll come. It's not like they're a bad team, obviously. Like, they destroyed Rocky Mountain a few days ago, last week, and then they beat Eagle pretty handily earlier on this week. So I think Owyhee, like you said, will be just fine, and is still definitely the favorite. I think Lake City is probably taking it to the next level. And you know what? There is a great opportunity for those two teams to meet back in March at the Idaho Center, which I think is a very real possibility. And that'll be a different Owyhee team then, right? They're going to go to that classic at Damien that week after Christmas and play some really good schools down there like they did last year. And they're going to get their feet underneath them. It is always tough to play. You look at college basketball, right? They play Duke and Kansas, Carolina and Kentucky will play each other the first week of the season, right? And that it's a hard indication of what you're going to see in March at the college level, and I would also argue at the here at the high school level. The team hasn't come together fully, sure, they've been playing club ball together and stuff like that, but I think they'll get better as they go.
Definitely. So there's 6 seniors on Oyhee's team this year, and 3 really that I look to in terms of emerging leadership. Preston Sherburne, who's kind of the lead guard out front, Barrett Fernandez, who's another guard, and then Titus Bailey, who played at Capital to start his career and is now a senior for Owyhee. So those are the 3 that I would look to, and then of course their most acclaimed player is Liam Campbell, the 6'5" junior, picked up an offer from USC last year after dazzling everybody at the Classic at Damien down in California. So, I think you're right. I think Owyhee is going to be just fine at what we see now, isn't indicative of what we'll see down the road. They did just win over Eagle last night, 76-61. So they beat the Mustangs. Now that game didn't count. Oh, go ahead.
I think Eagles that second spot, right, in the conference, and they took care of business again last year. That was a game of why he lost, right? In the regular season, went to like 4 overtimes or something like that. And so that's a good rebound, right? It would be you got beat, you came back, and you took care of business. I think that's a good message, and you score a lot of points, and you beat probably the next best team in your conference.
Yes. Now, this game didn't count in the conference standings. They will rematch January 17th in Eagle, and that will be the game that counts in the league standings. Their first league game comes next Wednesday, Logan. They will be at Meridian, and that's kind of the team that's right now we're thinking might be third in the SIC.
Right. So that should be a fun one.
Yes, that should be a fantastic matchup. And then they go down to Laverne, California for the Damien Classic after that. So and they also go at the end of January to Montverde, Florida. Montverde Academy is one of the premier basketball factories in America. So they're going to see some good competition down there in Florida as well.
Man, that's we always see teams come up here sometimes, and like how Laguna Beach played Homedale in football, and Owyhee's doing that on the opposite end, right? They're the ones traveling, which is great for Idaho, right? If we can get Idaho teams going out of state. I mean, Emmett did it last year too in football. They went to California and laid a licking on whoever it was they played. And it's great for Idaho to have, how many of those kids in Florida have ever heard of Idaho? Oh, are your dad potato farmers? I'm sure that's what they'll get being down there in Florida. Like that's what people know about Idaho. And it'd be great to add guess what? They play basketball too up there besides growing potatoes. And we don't even grow potatoes in the Treasure Valley. So
right.
It's like onions over here, right? I'm not a farmer, so that offends my wife's farming family from Eastern Idaho. But it's great exposure for the entire state. Like you don't have to be an Owyhee fan to appreciate them going down there. And I hope everybody is an Owyhee fan that day in Florida.
Yes, and I don't know if they're going to actually play Montverde Academy, but I mean, look at this. Look at some of the players that have played there recently. College basketball and NBA fans will recognize these names instantly. Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham, Joel Embiid. They had Ben Simmons play there. I mean, we're talking about some premier basketball players.
Yeah.
Francisco Lindor, the star shortstop for the New York Mets, baseball, but he went there. So, yeah, this is major league stuff that Owyhee's getting into. So
it's good to have Idaho on the radar, right?
Yes.
To have it there, whoever it is that plays there will. Oh, I'm playing a team from Idaho, and they will now have this newfound respect for Idaho that not only helps with reputation, but you hope with recruiting down the line, right? Where, I play this team from Idaho. They had some guys on that team, and ripple effects, right? It can benefit everybody, not just Owyhee.
Yes, for sure. All right, so let's swing back all the way down to the small school level. Let's talk about the small school showcase that took place. We'll start with boys basketball. This was at Mountain View. From 8:30 a.m. to 8:30 p.m., Logan, there was basketball all day. I think 10 games in all, pitting the best 1A and 2A programs against each other. The most notable story that came out of this was Garden Valley. Their boys started the day off. They tipped off at 8:30 in the morning. Garden Valley defeated North Star Charter. Garden Valley defeated Riverstone 66-51. And then later, go ahead.
I mean, we can hit up. Never mind. You keep going. I'll come back to that game.
Okay. And then Camas County was supposed to come over and play North Star Charter, but bad weather, and of course where they're at in Fairfield, they're way up in the mountains, so they couldn't come. Bad weather, bad roads. So tournament officials went to Garden Valley and said, "Hey, would you guys want to play a second game?" And they said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." So they played. At 8:30 in the morning and beat Riverstone. And then they turned around and played at 5:30 that night and played North Star Charter and won that game 72-63. So the Wolverines go 2-0.
And they dropped 66 and 72 on the same day.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. And it's not like that first game, I think, is an impressive win that warrants celebration in of itself. Riverstone's a good team, right? They made a run to the state title a couple years ago. They won a tournament earlier in the season at Dietrich, if I'm not mistaken. Dietrich's a good team, right? That's a good Riverstone team, and to defeat them, that's good for them, right? That's good for them to beat, a D1 school and take that on. And we talked about, who is it, right? In that conference, there's Cascade, there's Council, and there's Garden Valley. And from what we saw, it's like Garden Valley might be better, again, just like football, better than maybe people originally thought.
Yes. Heather Kelly, the coach at Garden Valley, has done a tremendous job with this group of athletes. And it's all the names we saw in football, right? Tacoma Kelly, Caden Zimmer, Trustin Brown, Gavin Kelly, Trayson Korn, Zaid Thompson, Trevor Korn. And they're all just, any one of those players is capable of leading the team on any given night. That's what makes Garden Valley so tough, is they're very balanced. So,
I mean, and Tacoma Kelly, right? I mean, he comes from the great Kelly bloodline, so you can only expect him to be a great player, right? I hadn't seen him in the position that he was at quarterback, right? I mean, you saw him when they played at Mullen, and I saw him at Horseshoe Bend. And man, that kid can dance in the backfield, and he was running all up and down the field. And it just seems like Garden Valley just has athletes. They can, they lose some, they'll just plug some more in, and they're always a factor. And this year, they look like they could make some noise. I know people are high on that Cascade team, but man, it'll be fun to see how Cascade and Garden Valley battle it out, and then as well as adding Council in the mix.
Yes. Garden Valley has speed. Tacoma Kelly, speed. Trustin Brown, for a bigger guy. He was a defensive end in football. He can really fly. So Garden Valley's got some pretty good speed. We're gonna find out Friday, December 16th, Logan. So in 2 days, Garden Valley hosts Council, and that's kind of the first measuring stick here for the Wolverines, because Council, Cascade, Garden Valley, I think, are kind of the top three right now. So we'll find out, when they play Council on Friday night, they get to host that game. That'll be very intriguing. And that's part of a girls boys doubleheader, and that girls game should be pretty interesting as well. So go ahead.
Well, just in both of those other teams, right? Council and Cascade, they both played at the small school showcase. Arguably probably played better teams than Garden Valley did, but both come up with losses in that, coming away from it. Now, again, we'll have to see how the season shapes up for a Riverstone and for North Star. But a lot of people are high on Victory Charter. A lot of people are high on Richfield, and that's who Council and Cascade lost to this weekend.
Yeah. One last note on Garden Valley. So North Star Charter is a 2A program, so they're punching up 2 levels, but North Star Charter is picked to be towards the back half of that 2A WIC, but still, that's an impressive win. Yeah. Let's talk about Council and Richfield, because this was the game we had both kind of circled as like, okay, if you can only go to one game at the small school showcase, 4:00, this is the one you want to go to, because it's a D2 versus a D2. two teams that could easily cross paths again at state. Richfield is part of this District 4 along with Camas County and Dietrich. Universally, almost every coach I've talked to says, yeah, all three of those teams are top 10 in the state for 1A D2 basketball. Well, only one of those teams gets to go to state.
I know,
because
it's
such a small district. And so for Richfield to come out and get a win over Council, it was close, 49-40. I think Council can be encouraged by that.
Yeah, and you know what? It's, again, we mentioned it with Owyhee, that there's going to be time, right? These games are great measuring sticks at the end of the day, because it only matters what you do in your district tournament, which I have a, that's a story for another day. Like, it only matters, like, really, at the end of the day, it only matters what you do in your district tournament.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that kind of stinks. Like, you could come down to one game in the first round and you have a hiccup, somebody, stubs their toe and can't shoot the right way, and boom, you're done. Again, story for another day. But I think Council will be okay, right? And they showed well, right? If you can compete with those teams from the Magic Valley, then you can compete. And so it'll be fun to see how that translates, right? You mentioned that's a big game, that Garden Valley Council game on Friday. Like you said, on the boys and girls side, it will be a huge one, right? It's going to tell us a lot about what we're going to see later on, and maybe give us some guidance about what really happened on Saturday. If Garden Valley just played teams that weren't as good, or, whatever it may be, we're going to find out when those two square off. But Council, if you take some positives away from a loss, that it was to a good team in Richfield who made a state tournament 2 years ago, right? And then they won one of their games. They broke a record for, I think, 3-pointers in a game, something like that. And they had tons of, they were putting up 3-pointers left and right. And so it's a good Richfield squad.
Definitely. And then, let's talk about Cascade. They had to play Victory Charter. Victory Charter wins 64-49. But these were the preseason favorites in the coaches' polls. Victory Charter for 1A D1 District 3. Cascade for 1A D2 District 3. Victory wins 64-49. Both of these teams are very good. Yeah,
and Victory Charter just they're rolling right now. Like they just, and I personally think it says more about Victory Charter than Cascade right here. But Cascade's a good team, and they made it to state last year as well. Made it a couple years ago, made a run at the state championship, and I think they'll be okay. It's just Victory Charter is, I think they're another team that's probably mad, right? Last year they don't make it to state when they were a good squad, and again, district tournaments, right? That's what it comes down to, and you don't perform in that, you don't go to the state tournament, no matter how well you did in the regular season. So for them, it's maybe a little bit of a revenge tour. I don't know, but they look really on point right now.
Yeah, they're off to a 4-0 start. They have a non-conference game at Glens Ferry next Monday, the 19th. And then this is the big one right before Christmas, Logan. Liberty Charter and Victory Charter have done this the past couple of years. They'll go play at Northwest Nazarene University in Nampa, NNU, little neutral court action. And so Victory Charter or Liberty Charter, Thursday, December 22nd, right before the winter break. That is the only time those two teams will play this year. It happened last year as well, and everybody in that league said, boy, that's a shame, because those were kind of the two best teams, and they played so early in the season that they didn't get to see each other again, and then they never got to play at districts, of course, because Rimrock came through and snuck away with one of those bids. But I know you love to do this, Logan, where you try to compare opponents. So Victory Charter played Dietrich at that holiday tournament that they won, that you alluded to. They beat Dietrich 68-64. So, a pretty tight win against a good Dietrich team. Liberty Charter played Dietrich at the small school showcase on Saturday and won 49-33. So what does that tell us about Liberty Charter and Victory Charter? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, on paper, right? You say that was the surprising one to me in the tournament, is when Dietrich, I was not expecting to see Dietrich lose by 16 points, right? And only score 33. They're a great scoring team. I mean, Cody Power can score 33 points in a game, and that's all they got. So I don't know. Like, I guess we'll find out. I mean, on paper, right, you would say that maybe that means Liberty Charter. You know, Liberty Charter's, is their defense that great? Was Dietrich just way off? I don't know. It's funny because last year in the small, that's a hard one to get out. Small school showcase, Dietrich was without like at least one player who was gone for a sibling's wedding. So I don't know, maybe somebody was gone or something, but wasn't expecting that. And maybe it does say more about Liberty Charter being a lot better maybe than we originally thought as well.
Yeah, and Liberty is 3-2. They have a 4-point loss to Murtaugh and a 7-point loss to Marcin, which is a 2A program and a pretty decent 2A program. Marcin was playing at the small school showcase as well. They lost to Lighthouse Christian by 2, 38-36. That was probably the most entertaining game of the day in terms of, close 2-point win for Lighthouse Christian. Horseshoe Bend played Rockland at the small school showcase. They lost 71-34. Rockland, of course, the reigning 1A T2 state champs, so no shame there. And then you had Hanson defeat Compass Charter in overtime, 69-63. That was a pretty entertaining game. And then Wilder picked up a win over Shoshone, 38-31. So congrats to Coach Lopez and Wilder.
Yeah, and Wilder, we saw them there last year at the small school showcase, and they struggled. It was a struggle for them. So it's good to see them putting up points, right, and getting in there, getting a win. They're a team that was down last year. I mean, putting it bluntly, and you don't like to see that, and you hope that they get better. And it looks like maybe Wilder on that upward trajectory now.
Yes. Let's talk about girls basketball, the small school showcase. This took place at Timberline. This was the first one where they said, we should have a showcase event for girls basketball as well. And I thought it went incredibly well. Among the highlights, I think probably, Victory Charter defeated Hagerman 31-14. Hagerman's a team that's, kind of new to They've had a JV only program for a couple years, and now they're kind of getting back into varsity. So that was a nice win for Victory Charter. And otherwise, the teams from the Treasure Valley really struggled, right? Rockland is a powerhouse. They defeated Rimrock 50-24. That to me was pretty eye-opening because Rimrock is a team that we expect is going to be at state for 1A D1, and they lose to Rockland 50-24. That opened my eyes a little.
Yeah, and as well, Liberty Charter, right? They're a team that seems to always be in the mix at the 1A D1 level here in District 3, and Shoshone beat them by 22. And so you hope that doesn't translate into state tournament, right? It's early. It's early. Hopefully these girls get things going, get their feet underneath them, and it is always different playing somebody that you're not accustomed to playing. I think that when you get into conference play, things are a little more familiar. But yeah, North Star Charter fell to St. John Bosco from up in Cottonwood. So really just a slow day for the Treasure Valley at the girls' small school showcase.
Yes. Victory Charter, the only District 3 team to get a win there. There was another tournament taking place involving smaller schools, the annual Raleigh-Lincoln tournament in Wilder. And we talked about this last week. Raleigh-Lincoln, longtime PA announcer for Wilder, started keeping stats back in 1972. And so because of that, Wilder has very detailed records going back. He passed away, in the late 2000s, right before 2010. So they've had this memorial tournament for him every year. Wilder hosts it. The boys will host this weekend. The girls had their tournament last weekend, and it's always nice when the host school wins, and that's what Wilder did. They played Glens Ferry in the championship on Saturday and got a 10-point win, 33-23. So congratulations to Coach Juan Arias and Wilder. Yeah,
so a good weekend for the Wilder Wildcats all around. Boys basketball gets the win, at their showcase. The girls win their tournament. Now the boys have a chance to back it up and win their tournament this weekend.
Yes, and Greenleaf Friends, I thought, played pretty well at this tournament as well. They're a girls team that you'll want to keep an eye on, certainly. They're what cost them is they lost to Glens Ferry 35-24 on Friday, which denied them. They ended up playing for third place and won third place pretty easily. So Greenleaf is another team with Shea Olson and company that we're going to keep an eye on as well. All right. I think that's pretty close to a wrap, Logan. We covered a lot this week in terms of smaller schools, which we like to do. There was a lot of exciting stuff going on.
And we want to start something new, right, this week. We're going to do this new thing, right? It's just going to be the school of the week, right? Across boys and girls basketball, we're just going to hit on one. And so this is the initial one. So we'll kind of go back even a little bit further than a week, but we'll be pretty consistent with giving you that team of the week. But this week, or, I'll say beginning of the season up till now, we're going to go Melba. Melba, and I do think that last week was a week to remember for Melba. So Melba had both the boys and the girls are on an absolute tear. Undefeated coming in. Both teams have beaten teams in classifications higher than them. Like, let's start with the girls' side, right? The girls have beaten Lapway, who I know is a 1A D1 school, but a very good 1A school. Beat them, and we talked about that. That's a big win. They go over to Eastern Idaho. They take care of business against Firth by 51 points. They take care of business against South Fremont, who's a 3A school. Beat them on the road. Or that was at home. Sorry, the boys went to Eastern Idaho. The girls were home. They beat South Fremont by 12. And then what do they do on Friday? They beat Parma, a perennial 3A powerhouse. The boys' side, you look at them again. They went over to Eastern Idaho. They beat Firth on the road by 18. They beat South Fremont, a 3A school, by 50. Like, that's not a little victory, right? And then on Saturday, so last night, Tuesday night, they beat Coal Valley Christian, who is kind of the one right there. We talked about that last week, about that battle in the conference. They win that game by 12, but they beat Homedale, who I really like at the 3A level to make noise, not just in the conference, but in the state. And they beat them by 10. And so I think that Melba deserves our first stamp team of the week this week, or school of the week, right? It's going to go to Melba. I think that their programs are just on fire right now. And I mean, it's not a thought. It's true. Like, look at the schedule. Look what they've done. They've just been rolling through everybody. And so congrats. We'll go ahead. I don't know if it's a congrats, like it's not really like a real prize or worth anything coming out of my mouth, but team of school of the week, Melba Mustangs.
Okay. And we'll see if they're a repeat winner this year for Logan's. This is something we'll do every week moving forward now. School of the week. And this is across the board, who really stood up and did well. So okay. Another Treasure Valley Prepcast in the books. We went long, but we had some very important stuff to talk about at the top of the show. And so thank you everybody for tuning in to the Treasure Valley Prepcast. Enjoy the competition coming up this weekend. And for Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.